Hi, I'm back in the kitchen today and I'll be making apple crisp and I'll be using a cast iron skillet. I'll start off on the stove top and finish it off baking in the oven. And it's a basic recipe with just a couple of twists. I'll be using a cider reduction to give it a little bit more intense flavor. And as thickener, I'll use minute tapioca that I've ground up. So let's get started and I'll show you the recipe. For the topping, you'll need 1 cup of oats, and I'm using old-fashioned oats. Put that right in the bowl. To that, I'll add 1/2 cup of flour. Add that to the bowl. 1/4 teaspoon of ground nutmeg. This just adds a little bit of extra flavor. A pinch of salt. 1/4 cup of chopped nuts. Today I'm using walnuts that I've pre-chopped. I'll add 1/4 cup of brown sugar. And I really like to pack it in the measuring cup, like so. There we go. I'll combine the ingredients together. Kind of smush down any of the lumps of brown sugar that form. That looks pretty good. Now I'll add 6 tablespoons of butter, and I've left the butter out so it's at room temperature so it's easy to incorporate into my dry ingredients. The butter is nice and soft, so I'll just mix it up. Now we'll set that aside for later. For my filling, I'm using 4 medium-sized apples, and today I'm using Fuji's. That's just because they were on sale. And I'm also using 1 Granny Smith to give a little bit of a different flavor and texture. So this is probably the most time-consuming part of the recipe. I'll quarter each apple up. And take out the center, just kind of cut it at an angle like so. And you do need to peel them, so I'm just using a vegetable peeler. And if I weren't on video, I would just have my radio going and my apple cider and just kind of enjoy the process. And you can cut your apples any which way you want. I kind of like to do 3 sections, 3 and 3, like so. They're nice little bite-sized chunks. And I just put them in my bowl. Now I'll add the juice of 1/2 lemon to my apples. I'll also add 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. Again, I pack it in there into the tablespoon. And I'll also add 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And I will combine. It smells delicious. That cinnamon is just wonderful. Now we'll set that aside and they're all ready to saute. I'm adding a little extra shortening on my pan. This is organic, all vegetable shortening. It's also non-hydrogenated. And I just like to keep a little coat. I'll keep this on my pans, my cast iron pans, when I store them. But because I'm baking sticky apples in here, I'm adding a little extra coat, especially on the sides. Now I'll reduce my cider. I have 1 cup of cider and I'll pour it right into my pan. I'll turn the heat on about medium. I'll let that come to a boil and it only takes about 5 minutes to reduce by half. And then I'll pour it right back into my measuring cup. I'll turn the heat off. Pour the cider back into my measuring cup. And it's reduced just almost exactly to a half of a cup. And that took 5 minutes. I'll turn the heat back on about medium. And I'll put 2 tablespoons of butter into my skillet. Let that melt just a little bit. And I've also preheated my oven at this point to 375. I'll add my apples. And I'll actually get my rubber spatula and get any of the juice that's collected in the bowl. And I'll saute these apples for 8 to 10 minutes, just softening them up just a little bit. And I'll give them a stir every minute or so. They've been sauteing for 8 minutes. I'll add back the cider that's been reduced. And at this point I'll add my ground tapioca, 1 teaspoon, and I'll put it right there in the middle of the liquid. And I like to grind up the tapioca so it doesn't create the little bubbles that are the result of regular tapioca. So when you grind it, it just acts as a nice thickener. And now I'm ready to add my topping. And I'll use my fingers, sprinkle it all over. And I've turned my heat off, by the way. And my oven is preheated. And I just try to cover up most of the apples. And I'll go ahead and pat it down. Be careful not to touch the apples. Now I'll put it in the oven, 375, for 20 to 30 minutes until the top is nice and brown. It's been baking for 30 minutes. It's nicely browned. I'm just going to check and make sure the apples are tender, and they are. So there you have it, Skillet Apple Crisp. I hope you give this recipe a try. It's really delicious. And I did put in the instructions 20 to 30 minutes baking time because everyone's ovens are different. And what you're looking for is a nice brown top and tender but not mushy apples in the center. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.